Welcome back to another episode of Watch Before You Die. I am Ben, this is Brian and Justin, and we watch movies for our own entertainment. We give you ratings on the internet. Sometimes we don't watch the movies, like Justin. He never watches them, and he's just here for eye candy. So this week we watched Citizenfour. It was a documentary on Amazon detailing the fall and rise of Edward Snowden, and we are going to get into ratings. So, Justin, go ahead and give us your rating.
I am going to give this one without any other explanation. I'm going to give this one a 7.8.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, you want to go next?
No, I don't actually.
I want you to go next.
Because he didn't think of a number. Go next.
5.0.
Okay. And I'll take the bottom spot. I will take a 3.
Wow.
Dang, boys.
3.0.
3.0. All right, I'm going to need you to repeat your rankings again because I wasn't writing them down.
Okay. So I was at a 5.0.
5. What were you at, Justin?
7.8.
7.8. Okay. Averaging those scores together, our overall ranking for this movie is a 5.3.
Okay. Yeah. Seems fair enough. Brian, why did you hate
Didn't
the
we
movie?
do another documentary one? And what ranking was that?
It was pretty high because you overcurved it because of the
13.
because of the content, not because of how it was made.
Yeah. So for 13th which was our other documentary that we did, Justin, you ranked it a 9.2. Ben, you ranked it a 7.5.
Justin,
so the reason. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say Justin's exact quote on that movie is, "How could anybody rank this movie low because of the content?" And then Brian and I proceeded to rank it low. So
lower than him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyways, go ahead, Brian.
No, so the reason I have to hate on this movie a little bit. So if you were living in America, and maybe this is not fair because I witnessed the news as it came out, right? I literally lived through the events of Snowden when he came forward with the information, and we were trying to figure out who this leak was, and then he announced himself and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of already knew the story. And so for me, watching this movie, the only information that it added to my life was really just kind of being in the room that it was all happening in, kind of seeing behind the scenes.
Okay.
It didn't really teach me anything new, and it didn't really call me to any action other than just like, I understand like security is a huge deal, right? I work in information technology. I work in a place where I have to use two-factor authentication. I'm very careful with passwords, and I know the kind of information that can be, scraped off of just even visiting a website, like the kind of stuff that you can pull off of people's computers and stuff like that. But this movie was just boring. It was so boring to me. Like, it literally, seeing his reactions in the room and kind of like knowing the story. I think even if I didn't know the story and how everything came out, I don't think I would sit down and watch this movie and come out just being like, you know what? I learned a lot, and I'm really happy I watched that movie. So I just didn't like it.
Okay.
I gave it a pretty low rating. I was tempted to go
lower. It was
lower.
very low. Very low. 3.0. By the way, we are in the spoiler territory if you're not.
Good call.
If you are watching, but we'll put it up when Brian starts talking, not when I just said that. So, Justin, why'd you rate it so highly?
I actually didn't rate it highly necessarily because of content, because I do remember a lot of the Snowden stuff. Okay. Never really cared, and to a degree still don't.
Which is what the whole point of the documentary was. In case anybody's wondering.
Well, which is sure. But I remember watching that movie Snowden with Joseph Gordon-Levitt when he does the really deep voice. And
at all, but and I've seen that movie.
Go back because you can tell he puts on a voice, and it's a lot more noticeable.
Snowden does have quite a deep voice, like even just in the documentary. I feel like his natural cadence.
Well, no, but it sounds completely out of the blue if you don't. Right, because I knew about Snowden, but I didn't know what he looked like. In fact, I thought him and Julian Assange were the same person
Mm,
for the longest time when all that stuff was kind of happening. I
okay.
think the Julian thing was way before, but at the same time, I was like, they got us again, you know. Uh,
Oh shoot.
shoot, they got the NSA. No, but for me, it was interesting because it did, for me at least, elicit some feeling, like emotional response to particularly some of the scenes where, um, yeah, it seemed very like overly paranoid and things like that, but the moment where things started to get, the tension was rising a bit.
Mhm.
I think the documentary was interesting more than what was happening, like the whole point of the story, which is the whole Snowden thing and like what the government is doing to people and privacy and all that kind of stuff. But to me, it was interesting because um, uh, they're talking about how, we've got to be very careful, and this is how we're going to go about doing this kind of stuff. And then there was a moment where the director of the documentary set up a scene where he's like getting ready or something to like move to a different place. I don't know. I guess he's going to go to a hotel, or maybe that was when they were moving him to Russia. It wasn't real clear, but to me, there was a moment where I didn't realize what was happening. It was when he gets the phone calls to the room he's in,
Mhm.
and it's like reporters from the Washington Post,
After it
and they're
leaked
like, right, and
who
they
he was.
found him,
Yep.
right,
Yep.
exactly who he was. They knew his name. They knew everything about him, and they knew exactly what room he was in some other country, and they started interviewing like Glenn, the journalist that was doing the whole thing,
Glenn Greenwald.
and then his partner got stopped by transportation authority.
Yep.
I can't remember what government it was,
Uh,
but I think it was like the UK or
I think it was.
something.
I think he was in Germany at that point. Maybe not.
Yeah,
Can't remember either.
yeah, yeah. And anyway, he got held in a cell for like or a holding room for like 9 hours or something, just because he was trying to go visit his husband.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was like a rising tension, and then Snowden's getting ready in his room, and he's like, and there's a moment where he answers the phone, and he's like, "Please leave me alone. You've got the wrong room." Da 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 da. And then they keep calling and keep calling, and the lady at the front desk is like, basically, I mean, you don't hear what she's trying to say, but he basically is trying to tell her, that he doesn't want calls
Yep.
to come to this room. They've got the wrong number. They obviously don't have the right person, and you can see there's a moment where he gets super flustered, and he's trying to like game the situation and try to figure out what he's going to do so that he can get from this place to, I guess, Russia is where he ended up. But he was trying to wait for his lawyer. There were lawyers that were coming to help move him, or I think it was Julian Assange's people were moving him to Russia, or trying to move him to Russia. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is that he was going from that place he was at, and how difficult and how I guess dangerous that was. And I didn't realize until after the fact that my heart rate was increasing while he was trying to figure out what he was going to do. And he's calling back to the room service people, and he's like, okay, maybe tell him this or something like that. But there was a heartbeat that was going on the track, like they were
Mm-hmm.
playing to elicit a response, and they got it out of me. Probably trying to make a boring circumstance or situation seem a little bit more high stress than it was, but
Yeah.
to me it was very high stress, and you could see it on his face that there was a lot of stress there as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I give the thoughtfulness of the director of that movie more props, and I think for that reason, that's why I rated it so high, is because I think that was a very thoughtful thing to do to increase attention, a feeling of tension in that situation.
Yeah. So I think I actually would have rated this movie higher. Like I went 5.0. I actually thought the movie was very good. Probably like in the 8 to 8.5 range. I enjoyed the movie, I enjoyed the content. I like Justin was talking a little bit about it, but like the point of the movie is that our generation of people is not concerned about the fact that the government
Mm.
can literally track our movements, and that was like that's the point of the movie. It's meant to point to the fact that we've stopped caring about the
Mm,
thing that Edward Snowden kind of gave his life up to show the world.
mhm,
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought the movie was excellent, but actually this movie was skewed for me because so like I watched Snowden when it came out. I've seen this documentary before. I actually read Glenn Greenwald's book on Edward Snowden. Like I was very deep into this. I was fascinated by it when it came out and kind of the years after that. But the movie is kind of ruined for me now because like this movie didn't age well. And what I mean by that
Mm,
is like Edward Snowden he was for a lot of people a an American terrorist. Basically, he took on our government in the worst
yeah.
possible way and kind of screwed us. And then for a lot of people, he was kind of an American hero. He exposed the world to what the governments were doing to normal people. Um, Edward Snowden's story has not aged well. You don't get to stay in Russia just because. That's not how it works. And Edward Snowden has kind of become a very polarizing figure as far as like, oh, I did this for the people, but not really, because again, the Russian government's not just going to let you stay there just because. And Edward Snowden is a very brilliant minded, skilled person. And him and Glenn Greenwald have not necessarily aged well, depending on what side of the world
mm,
you sit on. They've both kind of engaged in um, kind of anti-USA campaigns at this point in their lives, and kind of made it their mission to be anti-USA, when really, if you look at the movie, it proved that every government was involved at some level with the things that were going on.
mhm,
And
Well, and he says that like the UK was way worse,
way worse
mhm,
because there was less laws, so they could get away with literally everything. And
and
it
they were
yeah,
shows
helping
and
us.
it shows in the movie how much worse they were because the UK government, if you watched it through, the UK government came in and shut down all the publications of what was happening, where you can't do that in the United States. It just doesn't work
Right.
that way.
mhm,
And so, but I think it's interesting because like I think in some ways you watch the movie and you're like, oh, it's he exposed the UK, exposed the USA, he exposed well, China's doing the same thing. Russia's doing the same thing, but you don't hear any mention of those because it just doesn't work necessarily.
mhm,
Um, and so it was a weird movie for me because I enjoyed the movie a lot, but then it's like within the modern context of who these people have become, even Julian Assange to a degree. Um, he's in prison right now, if you don't know, um, and
I didn't know that.
has been for quite a while. And so it becomes a very polarizing thing, which is we know the governments are still doing these things. We know it's not a good thing. But how far is too far as the leaking of information, and how far is too far where you become a detriment to the safety of other people, the lives of other people, it's I feel like in some ways, even though he said he didn't want to be this, I think Edward Snowden did want his kudos and he did want to be like, I was that guy. And he kind of says that
mhm.
a little bit.
Yeah,
And he
there's a scene in the movie where they're like, "Don't you think we could delay a little bit longer? Like, do you
Mhm.
actually want to come forward? Like, do you think this is the time?" And I mean, I call it a movie, but it's real events. Like we're watching, and he's saying like, "You don't necessarily have to come forward. It's been 3 days.
Yeah.
They don't know you yet for sure." But he's like, "No, I'm ready to do it. I'm."
Yeah.
So you can kind of tell there's a little bit of, and he was smart about it. I do have to give him kudos, not to totally cut your point,
No, no, no.
Ben, but he knew the danger and he didn't want his family,
Yeah.
to be at risk. And so there was a lot of things that he chose to do that I think were intelligent. He didn't let them know anything about it, and he
Yeah.
separated himself, and he kind of knew the gravity of what he was dealing with and all that kind of stuff, which is um, like kudos to him and everything. But in the end, there was a small amount, at least, of him being like, eventually, I want everyone to know that it was me that did this. I don't
Yeah.
actually care about everybody getting educated or even stopping this practice as much as I just want to be famous for being that guy. And
Yeah.
I think he wants both, but I think he wanted a little bit more the notoriety, the fame
Well, and
than. the other.
And part of his reasoning, if I remember correctly, was he was trying to say, well, if I don't come forward, well, then the government will try to sweep it aside as like, oh, this wasn't a real government official. They don't actually know
Yeah.
things. These aren't real things.
Yeah.
I don't
He
think
also said,
I don't think that's
I want to
accurate.
convey that I'm not scared of you. I'm not hiding. I'm here.
The longer life has progressed, the less that feels realistic to me, and more it wanted to be like, oh, that guy is Edward Snowden. Like, because people who don't know anything about all these events that happened years and years ago now have probably at some point heard about Edward Snowden, and they're like, oh, I've heard that guy's name, so it skewed the movie for me. I don't know if that's how movies work, but documentaries are very unique in that they're real life. So much like 13, you watch it and you feel fairly disgusted because the reality is not much has changed since they made that movie. Well, this one's a bit different, where it's like these characters have become more polarizing. These people have become more controversial the more years have gone on, and kind of, in an essence, ruined the film for me a little bit. So, but I'm a documentary guy. I love documentaries, so I thought it was a very good documentary. Just
I don't know.
Didn't land for
still
me.
To reiterate what I said earlier, like I think the subject matter is important in that, like, you have to be careful how much of yourself you allow online. Like some people are okay with just putting literally, like, they learn their blood type and they're going to put that on the internet. They learn they got a new phone number, they're going to post it and be like, call me sometime. Like they just put everything. There's some people that are just so connected and they don't realize how much is already getting collected on you and how much you're just making it easier. Not to be like conspiracy tinfoil hat, but it is true. Like people want to sell you things, and so they want to market to you well. So they want to know what your interests are, so they follow you. And if ever, they wanted to trace stuff back, you'd be surprised the amount of information. So I do think it's important subject matter. The problem I have is because I lived through these events, I saw the news stories as they were breaking. I kind of made my own opinions of Edward Snowden when he came out, and you heard WikiLeaks in the news for like months after, all the getting hidden away or like protected for a year and all that kind of stuff and laying low in Russia and everything. Like I felt like he was always top of news headlines. But watching the movie, for me, I didn't feel like it was a good documentary because it didn't really have a good clip or a good pace to it. And it offered very little of, like, it kind of flashed back to some of the people who came before Edward Snowden and kind of gave you a little bit of the history of like some of the earlier whistleblowers or the people who have kind of spoken out first. But it really didn't. I mean, even if you're in the room with those people, they're writing on note paper to each other, not saying words out loud because they're afraid of wiretaps. And then they don't ever really show you like what's on the notes or what they're talking about. And it's something that happened, so long ago, that unless you knew the news stories and what happened, unless you lived through it like me, I think if my daughter watched this movie, or if somebody else, who didn't live through those events watched this movie, they'd be like, okay, so what happened? Like, I'm so confused. Because it's such a slice of like that time in history, like that snapshot, that I feel like if you're younger than that snapshot of history, you'd be like, okay, and now my cell phone tells more information every single day about me than anything else, so I don't know. As far as me, I was just super bored. That's why I had to rank it low.
Nothing wrong with that. And by
a lot of reading too on this one.
That is
like
true.
the little email clips, and she reads some of them, but then there was the point when Snowden's no longer on, like he's not in that room in China, and everybody's kind of gone to their different sectors. And it's just like little chat boxes, and it's just like dead quiet, and it's just like you gotta just read it, and I'm just like, I was
also like,
I was gobsmacked because I had no context of who Glenn Greenwald was. When he
spoke Portuguese,
when he started speaking fluent Portuguese, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
He literally isn't native. He lives in Brazil,
right? I figured.
Brazilian.
I figured at that point, but like, but I was just, I was like trying to figure out what's going on, because
where did
it
that
just
guy
like
come from?
Changed gears. I guess it really just kind of throws dumb Americans for a loop if we only speak one language, when somebody starts coming out and speaking perfect Portuguese or something, and it's like,
man, he's learning really well.
That guy knows multiple languages.
I also had to Google a couple of times while watching this. I kept forgetting the director's name, and since they were using initials, like they had ES and LP, like the documentary was told from her perspective because she was
there.
she was encryptedly contacted to say, like, if you choose to accept it, come join me here and bring Glenn with you.
And
like
bring your
that was kind of the
camera.
beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But it was from a first person perspective, and it took me a while to realize, like, oh, he was talking to the camera lady who you never see in the movie.
Correct.
And then like all the back and forth, the ES to LP like text exchanges, I was like, who is LP? Because like they're not in front of the camera ever.
Yeah.
They never introduce themselves. It's like, my name is such and such, and I was contacted. Like you're just in there.
It does.
And I'm stupid, so maybe other people caught it faster. But I was like, what's happening?
It does play upon the reality that people know who these people are. I do agree with that. Like they created a movie, which is to say, if you lived within this time frame, you should know all of these main players of this big story.
Hey man, Wolf Blitzer, incredible performance.
Yeah, he did a great job. It's like
Hands down.
Almost like he gets paid to do the news or something. I don't know, strange. But if you're still watching at this point, if you're still watching at this point, the question is, do you know who Edward Snowden is? I'll put it up. I'll put it up on the screen. Do you know who Edward Snowden is, or would this movie be totally foreign to you? That's kind of like our comment question. Put it in the comments if you know who he was, or if you were to go watch this movie, you'd be totally lost, no clue who it is. He's a totally stranger, little weird guy that is running from the government. You know, I mean,
okay,
yeah.
And
so
I think you hit it on the nose earlier, Ben, when you said, oh gosh, my train of thought just ran off the tracks. Hold on just one second.
Yep.
I
appreciate what you said about me, though. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. Just rewind to that point in the video and listen to that again, because I can't remember what it was.
Whatever it was.
Must have been a good point.
Hasn't aged well. Aged well, as
no, it hasn't aged
earlier.
Well. No.
I think if I would have watched this movie closer to the events of this movie when they were like still hot, or when they were like even recent memory, because looking online, it looks like this happened like in the 2007, 2006 range. And then this movie was released in 2014. If I would have watched it like the day it came out, like Smoking Gun or whatever, even then it might have been more recent. But living in the year 2023, I'm like, snooze fest, bro. Like, I think back then it would have been, it would have gotten higher ranks, but I do think it has fallen a little bit.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. So
you're totally right on that, Ben. Great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, crushed it. Well, let's go for the next one. Even though this movie didn't get a super high rating from us, comparatively to some of the movies we have watched, this movie was like 12 out of 15. And that was a fake scale I just made up. So let's get the next movie.
Like we did the metric at the very beginning. Nah. Why are we making another one?
We're 16 out of 40, you know?
This is new rankings. New rankings. All right. We have made it through 10 movies.
Yes.
Our first 10 movies. We only have 1,236 movies remaining.
We're grinding.
Crushing it.
And our next movie is number 1049. 1049.
The 2014 film.
No, 2006.
Citizenfour.
2006. I always go with 2006.
2003 movie called Goodbye Lenin.
Goodbye Lenin.
Well, like Lenin as in the
correct. Goodbye Lenin.
The Russian guy? Bolshevik?
Goodbye Lenin. Okay, here we go.
Fall of communism right here in front of us, ladies and gentlemen.
This is Goodbye Lenin, according to IMDb, is it says in 1990, to protect his fragile mother from a fatal shock after a long coma, a young man must keep her from learning that her beloved nation of East Germany as she knew it has disappeared. That is the context. It is it doesn't look like it's easy to find, with the exception of purchase. It looks like you can purchase it for about $2.99 on most platforms.
It's a good sign.
Amazon, YouTube, Google, Apple TV, Vudu. They're all $2.99 or $3.99. And I was trying to find a rating for it, which I'm having a hard time finding the rating. So, rated R. It is rated R.
I seem to remember when this movie came out. I didn't see it, but I do remember when it came out. It seems familiar to me, and I'm going to make an early prediction. I think this is going to be a good movie. We're going to find out.
Yeah, just one before we go on. What was it called one last time? Sorry.
Goodbye Lenin.
me see if I can find why it's rated R, so we're all not shocked when it is rated R.
Cannibalism. Nope, that's Hannibal.
Okay. So this is for anybody who may not want to watch. Rated R for scattered use of strong profanity, sex talk, violence, and some brief nudity. So, I mean, it's rated R. We're all adults here.
We're gonna see a butt cheek. Hands
Don't-
down. It's
don't
just
think
gonna
that-
be a butt cheek. That's
I don't know if that
that's
was
brief
necessary.
nudity.
I don't know
Hands
if that
up.
was necessary.
Hands down,
A
Wally,
whole.
'cause the thumbs up.
I was gonna say hands down. That's the only nudity we're gonna see is what I think
Okay.
I was going for, but
Yeah, it's
I
not
don't
what
know.
you said though.
Nope.
Well, on that note, we
that's what the world will remember.
yes, we will see you next week with maybe a special episode or maybe a review of Goodbye Lenin. So enjoy it, and we hope to see you there.